Her true story, from Washington. My granddaughter called me a witch until she found what I kept in the drawer. I hope you are happy now. My dad is dead because of you. You feel proud of that? You turned me into an orphan. No dad, no mom, no one who loves me. No one. You are not even human. You are just a witch. That was what my granddaughter screamed at me, her voice trembling not from fear but from rage, her phone held high, as if she was testifying to the entire world. The red light on the screen glowed like an accusation. I sat there, hands folded gently on the old oak table, my tea still steaming beside me, while the flood of her words poured down. I said nothing. It was not the first time she called me a witch. It was not even the 100th. But this time, the room was not just the two of us. This time she had brought strangers in, hundreds of them, watching through their screens, judging a woman they had never met. "This is her," she said, spinning the camera toward me, as if I were some exhibit. "This is the woman who ruined my life, who locks me up in this dusty prison and calls it discipline, who acts like being born before the internet makes her God." I turned my eyes toward her, but not toward the camera. The difference between the two has always mattered to me. Emily, the real Emily, stood there with her shoulders squared and her heart on fire. 15 years old, furious, betrayed. But beneath the yelling I saw something else too, pain, a loneliness that matched my own. "You never let me be normal," she said. "No phone after 9, no sleepovers, no parties. I cannot even wear a tank top without you making me feel like I'm naked in church. You are obsessed with control, and you pretend it's love." I took a slow breath. My hand trembled as I reached for my cup, but I steadied it before she could see. "You never told me what happened to my dad," she continued, her voice cracking. "You never told me where my mom went. You just kept me here like some broken doll you're afraid someone might fix. I am not your redemption story. I'm not your secret. I'm a person. And I'm done letting you treat me like I owe you silence." Still, I said nothing. Because what could I say? She was not wrong to feel abandoned. She was not wrong to be angry. She had lived most of her life behind walls she did not choose, and for years I had stood between her and the truth, not to hurt her, but to save her from it, or so I believed. The comments on the live stream were still rolling in. I could not read them, but I could feel their weight. Laughter, outrage, curiosity, strangers picking sides in a story they knew nothing about. Emily turned the camera back to herself. "If you've ever wondered what it's like to live with a real witch, wonder no more. She's here, and she thinks silence is love, but silence is just empty." She ended the stream with a tap. The silence that followed felt heavier than the shouting. I looked down at my tea, untouched, and wrapped my fingers around the cup. The heat had faded, just like her trust, just like everything we used to share when she was small enough to fall asleep in my lap. I remembered the first night she came to live with me. Her clothes were too small. Her hair hadn't been washed in days. She clung to a stuffed rabbit with no ears and didn't speak a word for 3 days. Back then, she was afraid of everything, the dark, the quiet, me. Now, she feared nothing, not even the truth. "You gonna say something?" she asked, quieter now, almost daring me. I looked up, met her eyes, and then I shook my head. "No," I said, "not tonight." Her face twisted into something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not disgust. Something closer to heartbreak. She left the room without another word. The stairs creaked under her weight. Her door slammed shut. I remained at the table, the light above flickering just slightly. I listened to the refrigerator hum, the wind outside brushing against the windows, the ticking of the clock like a pulse refusing to die. I had known this moment would come. It had been coming for years. Each rule I enforced, each story I refused to tell, each bedtime when she asked where her mother was, and I answered only with a story about angels. She had asked me once, when she was 10, "Why don't I have a mom like other kids?" I had looked out the window then, at the trees bending in the wind, and simply said, "Some mothers aren't born knowing how to love." That answer had not satisfied her, but it was all I could give. There were things I had locked away, in drawers, in boxes, in the deepest corners of my heart, not because I was ashamed, but because I believed, perhaps wrongly, that love meant bearing the weight alone. Now I wondered if I had mistaken silence for protection. Because silence in the end had turned my granddaughter into a stranger, into a girl who could scream into a camera and call me a witch while hundreds watched like it was a reality show. She didn't know. She didn't know what I took her from, what I kept her from, what her father begged me to do with his final breath on paper. And yet, somehow, in that moment, I was not angry with her. I was only tired. Tired of carrying a truth too heavy to name. Tired of pretending that survival did not come at a cost. Tired of being the villain in a story where I had only ever tried to love the best way I could. As the lights dimmed and the clock ticked into midnight, I sat alone in that kitchen and thought, if she must hate me, let her hate me now, so that one day maybe she can forgive herself for not knowing. Emily came to live with me when she was 7 years old. Her mother was lost to things I do not have polite words for. Her father, my son, disappeared one night and never came back. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a voicemail that said, "Take care of her, Mom. I can't anymore." And then silence. I picked Emily up from a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like sweat and smoke. Her shoes were too small, her lips were chapped. She held a doll missing one eye and didn't speak for the entire car ride home. When we pulled into my driveway, she looked up at the trees surrounding the house and whispered, "Is this where the witch lives?" I said nothing. I did not hold her hand. I led her to the guest room and told her to unpack what she could. I made oatmeal for dinner and we ate in silence. She didn't cry. I think she was too tired. That was the beginning. I was not soft with her. I won't pretend I was. I fed her. I clothed her. I made sure she had clean sheets and warm socks and a roof that did not leak. But I did not tuck her in at night. I did not read bedtime stories. I did not kiss her forehead and tell her she was special. I was afraid of getting too close, because I knew one day she would leave me, and I did not want it to hurt more than it already would. As she grew, the silence between us stretched. I set rules. I had to. No phones after 9. No crop tops or short shorts. No makeup before high school. No sleepovers unless I spoke to the parents myself. No parties where there would be boys, or alcohol, or both. No wandering through the woods at dusk. No TikTok, no Snapchat, no lying. Every rule came from somewhere. A mistake I had seen, a danger I had known. But to her, they were shackles. At school, the kids called me the witch on the hill. I knew that too. Kids laugh at what they do not understand. I became a character to them. An old woman in a gray house who didn't trust the world and kept her granddaughter locked away from it. And Emily, God bless her, just wanted to be normal. She wanted to wear what the other girls wore, talk the way they talked, laugh about things that I could not find funny. She wanted to blend in, but I would not let her. I was not raising her to fit in. I was raising her to survive. Still, the price was high. She began to resent me around age 12. That's when she got clever. That's when she stopped asking and started hiding. She would sneak a phone into her room and stay up whispering into it under the covers. I would find wrappers from candy I never bought hidden behind her dresser. Her browser history showed searches like "How to Run Away at 13" and "Emancipation for Minors." And one day, I heard laughter from the porch and opened the door to find her and 2 of her friends huddled around a phone. They were watching a video she had made. It showed me cooking in the kitchen. The camera was shaky, hidden behind the hallway door. I was humming an old hymn my mother used to sing and stirring a pot of stew. The lighting made my face look hollow, the shadows under my eyes more sunken than they were. She had added sound effects, cackling, thunder. The caption read, "Caught my witch grandma summoning something in the stew." I said nothing then. I closed the door. But that night, I wept. Not because I was hurt, I had been called worse, but because I saw how far I had pushed her without ever offering her a hand to hold. I had become the villain in her story. The video didn't go viral at first. Just a few likes, a few comments. "This is hilarious. She looks possessed. Lamau, does she eat rats?" Emily laughed when she read them. She showed me once, mocking the way I squinted at the phone. "You've got fans," she said. I did not laugh. Weeks passed. Then she posted another one. This time, she staged it, placed a candle in the window, played Gregorian chants from her Bluetooth speaker, hid under the table, and filmed my shadow against the kitchen wall. The caption, "Witch Grandma Caught Doing Rituals at Midnight." It exploded. Tens of thousands of views, hundreds of comments. A few offers from people asking if she wanted to collaborate on a haunted series. She didn't take them. But she liked the attention. I pretended not to see, until the day I couldn't. She had just posted a new one. I was cleaning green beans at the sink when she burst in, laughing, phone in hand. "You have to see this, Gran," she said, flipping the screen around. "Your face is priceless." The video was me again. This time, asleep in my chair, twitching slightly in a dream. She had added creepy violin music and zoomed in on my mouth, which was half open. The caption read, "When the witch goes dormant before feeding." She laughed. I stared at the screen, and then the room tilted. The knife in my hand dropped into the sink. The cold water splashed up. My knees buckled. I hit the floor before I could call her name. When I came to, she was gone, and I was alone in the kitchen, my head pounding, my hands trembling, and a truth sitting heavy on my chest. I had saved her from one kind of hurt, only to deliver her into another. I had turned myself into a ghost so she could feel safe, but in doing so, I had vanished from her heart entirely. And now the world thought I was a monster. Maybe they were not wrong. It happened on a Tuesday night, after the stew and before the storm. I had not been feeling right all day. There was a pressure behind my ribs, something tight and unfamiliar, like a rope being pulled slowly around my chest. But I had ignored it, like I ignored most things. The body is just a worn house by this age. Things fall apart, creak, stretch too far. You learn to live with the ache. Emily had been upstairs for hours. The door closed, laughter slipping through the walls like smoke. I had not checked on her. I knew better than to knock when she was in that mood. Whatever mood that was. I stood at the sink, washing a cup, when the pain finally gripped me. It was sudden, mean. My knees gave first, then my vision. I remember reaching out, thinking I could hold on to the counter, but the ceramic slipped through my fingers and shattered before I hit the floor. I do not remember the rest. They told me later that it was Mrs. Clifton, our neighbor, who found me. She had noticed the kitchen light still on well past midnight and decided to peek through the window. She saw me on the floor and came in through the back door without hesitation. She called the ambulance. She rode with me to the hospital. She signed the papers. Not Emily. Emily had been asleep, or so she claimed. Her room was upstairs. Her headphones were in. She said she had no idea. But when I returned home days later, something in the house had shifted. And not just the air. There was a drawer in my bedroom. An old thing, stiff with time, at the back of the tall dresser I had owned since my 20s. It was locked, always locked, but I found it cracked open, and the key, once worn on a chain around my neck, was missing from my jewelry tray. I knew immediately what had happened. She had opened the drawer. She had found the box. That wooden box was never meant to be discovered, not by her, not like that. I had kept it hidden not because it was shameful, but because it was sacred. It held the pieces of a life I had tried to keep from collapsing entirely. A collection of things I read when I needed to remember that I had done something good once. Something brave. Or at least, something necessary. She had opened it, and so, while I rested under my quilt that following week, weak and wary, I waited. Waited for the storm that would come when she realized her father had not vanished into nothingness, but had lived, and written, and begged me for help. I had not spoken of those letters in years. The first arrived months after I took Emily in. It was short, rushed, written in pencil. He did not know if I would read it. He said, "I am sorry, I should have done more. You were right, she is not safe." There were more after that. Some came every few weeks. Others were spaced by seasons. Sometimes he wrote from his car, from a borrowed address, from a place with no return. They were not love letters, not in the romantic sense, but they were full of desperation and guilt and something deeper than apology. They were the ramblings of a man trying to become a father while drowning under the shame of having failed already. He wrote about Emily, how she used to cry when the lights flickered, how she clung to a blanket that smelled like smoke. He wrote about her mother, how the addiction had sharpened her voice into a blade, how she had once traded Emily's school shoes for pills. And he wrote about me. He wrote, "I know you think I am weak. You are not wrong. But please, please keep her. Please let her stay." I read those letters again the day after I came home from the hospital. I pulled the box from the drawer myself this time, not because I had changed my mind, but because now it was too late to protect the secret. And the top letter, creased at the corners, fingerprints smudged across the ink, had clearly been read recently. It was the one he had written after I refused to let him take Emily back. He had come to the house one night, shouting from the porch, drunk, angry, desperate. "I am her father," he yelled. "You were," I said, "until you let her starve." He had driven off into the dark. A week later, I got the letter. It said, "If anything happens to me, tell her I tried. Tell her I fought. But if she grows up hating me, let her. Let her be angry. At least she will still be alive. If she grows up hating you, I hope you will forgive her, because you did what I could not. You saved her." Emily had read that. I knew it, and yet she had not said a word to me since. She walked differently now, not angry, not spiteful, just quiet. There was no mocking, no filming, no laughter behind closed doors. She made me tea without asking. She did the dishes without complaint. Something had shifted. I watched her closely one evening as she stood by the window, staring into the trees. Her shoulders looked smaller than before. Or maybe I had just stopped seeing her as an enemy. She turned to me and asked, quietly, "Do you still dream about him?" I did not pretend not to know who she meant. "Yes," I said, "every night." And for a moment, we just stood there. Two women, a generation apart, bound by the silence of a man we both had loved and lost and forgiven in different ways. The box was back in the drawer now, but its contents no longer belonged only to me. They belonged to her, too. And though I could not erase what she had seen or how she had seen it, I could finally stop pretending that silence was enough to hold the weight of love. I never meant for her to read those letters. Not one of them. They were never meant to be opened by her hands, not even when she was grown. I had kept them not for her, but for myself, a quiet collection of guilt and grief, sealed in a wooden box and buried beneath folded linens and locked drawers. It was the only way I could hear his voice again, the only way I could remember him as more than the broken man he became. But secrets don't stay hidden forever, and now that she had seen them, there was no turning back. I reread the letters that week, slowly, one by one, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as a woman retracing the shape of loss. My son never sugarcoated anything in his writing. He did not dress his shame in flowers or try to clean up his past with excuses. The ink was raw, the words uneven, sometimes desperate, always honest. In one letter he wrote, "I found her selling Emily's toy horse today, the little brown one with the red ribbon. Said we needed the money for groceries, but I knew better. She hadn't eaten in 2 days and didn't care. Emily just stood there watching. Didn't cry. That was worse than anything. I remembered that toy. I had given it to Emily on her 4th birthday. She'd slept with it for months. When I picked her up that night, God, I will never forget it, she didn't even ask where it had gone. She just climbed into my car, clutching her blanket like it was a lifeline." Another letter came weeks later. She took the blanket, swapped it for pills. Emily shivered all night. I wrapped her in my coat, told her it was a camping game. She believed me, but she won't keep believing forever. That was the night I drove across 3 counties and knocked on his door without warning. I didn't ask permission. I didn't wait. I took Emily in my arms, wrapped her in my own coat, and said, "You've done all you can. Let me do the rest." He didn't fight me. He just cried. In the beginning, Emily asked about her mother. Little questions, soft ones. Why doesn't she call? Or, did she forget my birthday? I answered with silence, or a soft hum, or, not everyone knows how to be a mom, sweetie. As she got older, the questions turned sharp. Why did you take me away? Did she hate me? Did Dad hate me too? I lied. I told her her father had to leave for work, that her mother had been sick, that they loved her just from afar. I never expected the truth to find her before I could explain it properly. The final letter in the box was the one I feared most, the one I had read more than any other, the one with a crease down the middle from being folded and unfolded again and again. He had written it the week before he died. "Mom, if you're reading this, I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to get her. I know you won't approve. I know you think it's dangerous. but I can't live with myself knowing I left my daughter with questions I never answered. The ink smudged at the bottom of the page, a single drop spreading like a bruise. He never made it. The next morning there was an accident on Highway 9, rain-slick roads. A pickup truck rolled into a ravine. No ID on him, just a wedding band and a receipt for a stuffed rabbit from a gas station. I never told Emily. How could I? How could I look into the face of a child who already felt abandoned and say, "He was coming for you, but he died on the way"? Instead, I carried that burden for both of us. I let her grow up believing her father had walked away. I thought I was protecting her from pain. Maybe I was protecting myself. In that final letter, he wrote, "If she grows up hating you, let her. If she throws every ounce of pain at your feet, let her. Because you're the only one who stayed. The only one who chose her safety over your comfort. You're the last good thing in her world. And you have to let her believe you're not. That's the deal. That's what love looks like now." And so I did. I let her hate me. I let her twist me into the villain, the prison guard, the witch on the hill, and I never once corrected her. Until now, she has seen the truth whether she was ready or not. And in her silence since, I've seen something unraveling. Not anger, not rebellion, understanding. One night, she stood at my bedroom door and didn't say a word. She just looked at me. Her eyes weren't wild anymore. They were full of something heavier. And I knew, without her saying a thing, that she had read that final letter, that she had heard his voice, just like I had. And that, for the first time in a long while, she was seeing me not as the enemy, but as the woman who stood between her and a world that would have eaten her alive. After the letters, Emily changed. But change, I've learned, is not always sudden. It comes in small movements, quiet ones. She began leaving the dishes in the sink rinsed instead of crusted over. She asked if I needed anything from the store, though she never waited for my answer. She made 2 cups of tea at night instead of 1, and left mine on the counter, wordless but warm. Then, one morning, I noticed she had taken the old newspaper box from the attic. I said nothing. I knew what she was doing. She was chasing ghosts. And this time, I let her. She spent hours reading microfilm at the library, scrolling through pages of local obituaries and police reports. She borrowed yearbooks from neighbors who still remembered her father as a boy. She interviewed Mrs. Clifton, the postman, even the old man at the gas station who had sold my son coffee every morning, the year before he died. She was trying to trace a line through the silence I had built. I let her, because it was time. I saw the moment the truth landed. It was late. She came home with her jacket soaked through and her eyes rimmed red. I was crocheting in the living room. She stood in the doorway, clutching a photocopy in one hand. A death notice. Single vehicle accident. Highway 9, slippery roads, no foul play suspected. "Was he coming to get me?" she asked, her voice barely above a breath. I looked at her, at the paper, at the girl who still called me her jailer only weeks ago. "Yes," I said, and that one word made her knees give. She sank onto the couch across from me, arms limp at her sides. "He was coming for me," she whispered, "and I never knew." I set my yarn aside. "You were 7, I said softly. "You were just a little girl. You did not need to carry that." "But I do now," she said. "I carry it now." She stayed there for a long time, staring at nothing. I thought she might cry. I thought she might scream. But instead, she asked, "Why did you never tell me?" I folded my hands in my lap. "Because if you had known," I said, "you would have blamed yourself. You would have wondered if your anger made him come, if your sadness called him back, if your need became a death sentence." She looked at me, eyes wide, trembling. "And I would rather," I said, "be hated by you than have you hate yourself." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, thick, sacred. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out another paper, this one a printed email from a county clerk. His name, the date of the crash, an inventory of what was found in the vehicle. No drugs, no alcohol, just a suitcase, half-packed, a stuffed rabbit, and a letter addressed to me, never mailed. "Did you know?" she asked. I nodded. "The police called me the next morning. Said he had me listed as next of kin." "And you never told anyone?" "I told the coroner where to send the remains. I told the cemetery which plot to dig. I told the grass where to grow." She shook her head. "No funeral?" "No. Just me, and him, and the dirt." She covered her face with both hands, the paper fluttering to the ground. I watched her shoulders shake, and for a moment she looked so much like her father that it stole the breath from my lungs. Then she asked the question I had never expected to hear. "If I don't hate you anymore," she said, "do you forgive me?" I looked at her then, not as a child, not as someone I had raised out of duty or blood, but as a girl who had finally grown into the shape of her truth. I smiled, and I said, "There is nothing to forgive," because there wasn't. Because love, when it is real, does not keep a ledger. It does not wait for apologies or make lists of wrongs. It simply endures, quietly, without need for recognition. She got up and came to sit beside me. For the first time in years, she rested her head on my shoulder. I stroked her hair. She didn't pull away, and in that moment, I realized I had done something right. Not everything, but something. I had not saved my son. I had not stopped the car or changed the road or made the rain stop falling that night, but I had kept his daughter alive. And now at last, she knew that. The phone was propped up on a makeshift stand made from books and a candle jar. Emily adjusted the angle twice, then stepped back and smoothed her shirt. She was wearing one of my cardigans, oversized on her frame, sleeves bunching at the wrists. I sat quietly in the armchair by the window, the same spot I had occupied for years, watching seasons change and words remain unsaid. But not today. Today, she was going to speak. She took a breath, deep and shaky, then tapped the button to go live. "Hi," she said. "I don't really know how to start this, but I guess I should begin by saying I was wrong." There were already a few dozen people watching, her followers, many of whom had liked, shared, and laughed at videos she had once posted of me, of the witch, of the woman with too many rules and not enough softness. Emily continued, "You've probably seen my videos, the ones where I made fun of my grandma, where I said she was controlling, where I said she was cruel, and honestly at the time, I believed it." She glanced over at me for just a second. Her eyes didn't flinch. "But I found something a few weeks ago. A box, letters, stories I was never supposed to read, but I did. And now I know the truth." She paused, swallowing hard. "My mom was addicted. She left. My dad, he didn't abandon me like I thought. He died, coming back for me, trying to bring me home, the home he thought I'd never forgive him for leaving." The comments started to roll in. Hearts, question marks, a few, "OMG, what?" Emily pressed on. "My grandma, Jess, isn't a witch. She's not a villain. She's the one who stepped in when my parents fell apart. She's the one who made sure I ate, who made sure I didn't get taken away or lost, or worse. But instead of thanking her, I hated her. I called her names. I recorded her without her permission. I put her pain online and laughed about it." She exhaled. "There's one letter I keep thinking about. It's from my dad. He said, 'If she grows up hating you, let her. At least she'll still be alive.' That's how much she loved me. That's how much she gave up to protect me." Emily looked at the screen again, voice steady now. "Due to the people who thought my videos were funny, who commented with laughing emojis and called her a freak, I need you to know. You were laughing at someone who saved my life. And I let you. That's on me." She stepped closer to the camera then, just enough for her eyes to fill the frame. "To my grandma," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I'm sorry, I didn't move." "Not yet." Emily turned slightly, so the camera caught both of us in the shot. Me, sitting in my worn armchair, hands folded in my lap, eyes calm. She said, "If she's a witch, then she's the kind that stands between a child and the darkness, the kind that holds the storm back with her bare hands." The screen filled with hearts. A few people typed, "I'm crying. This is beautiful. Forgive her, please." I didn't cry. I just nodded once. Then I said, for all of them to hear, "You didn't know. Now you do. That's enough." Emily didn't say anything after that. She ended the live stream quietly, no dramatic flourish. Just a swipe of her thumb and the screen went black. We sat in silence for a moment after, then she crossed the room and knelt beside my chair. "I can't take it back," she whispered. "I know," I replied, "that I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel alone again." I looked down at her, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "I never was," I said. "Not really. You were always here, even when you didn't know why." She rested her head against my knee. Outside, the wind carried spring with it, soft and fragrant. and inside I felt, for the first time in a very long time, light. I do not know the exact moment I stopped being the witch in her eyes. There was no dramatic scene, no sweeping music or grand apology drawn in tears. It just shifted, slowly, gently, like spring creeping into the bones of winter. One morning I woke up and realized Emily had started calling me Gran more than her. She laughed in the kitchen instead of filming in secret. She touched my hand when she passed the salt. She lingered after dinner. And I, in return, softened in places I thought had turned to stone. For the first time in years, our home was not silent. We filled it with small sounds, banter over burnt toast, the radio humming old country songs, the scrape of chairs pulled close together, the hush of pages turning as we worked on a scrapbook she insisted we build together. She had found my old photo boxes one afternoon and spent hours going through them, asking who each person was, what each face meant. Some names I had not spoken aloud in decades. Some memories I thought had long turned to dust came rushing back as I pointed and smiled and sometimes cried. "This was your dad at 7, I said, holding up a picture of him in a paper crown made of tinfoil. He made me call him King of the Couch for 3 days after that birthday. Emily laughed. "He looks like me." "He was a lot like you," I nodded. "Stubborn, curious, always too brave for his own good." We spent that whole Sunday cutting, pasting, labeling. She decorated the cover with pressed flowers from the garden and wrote in neat cursive, "The family I never knew I had." She took me to the doctor next week. My blood pressure had been creeping up again. She made the appointment without asking, drove me, sat in the waiting room scrolling her phone, but I knew she was listening. Afterwards, she bought me ginger tea and told me to stay off salt. "Yes, ma'am," I teased, and we both laughed at the reversal of roles. She started cooking on Fridays. Simple things at first. Pasta, sandwiches, scrambled eggs, too runny. But then one day I heard pots clanging, and when I stepped into the kitchen, she was standing over the stove, stirring something in my old cast-iron pot. "What are you making?" I asked. She looked sheepish. "Your beef and barley soup." My heart skipped. She had found the recipe card, yellowed and smudged, stuck between pages of my old cookbooks, the same soup I used to make for her father when he had long days at school or bruises he would not explain. The one thing he never refused, no matter how much trouble he was in. I watched her taste it, wrinkle her nose, add more time. When she handed me a bowl, I could not speak for a full minute. It tasted almost right. Almost. But it was perfect. That night she posted a photo of the soup on her social media, with a caption that read, "I used to think my grandma was cruel. Now I see she's the strongest woman I've ever known." It went viral. Again. But this time, for different reasons. The comments were full of people saying they had misjudged their own elders, that they were calling their grandmothers, that they were sorry for every time they misunderstood love as control. I read every word, slowly. Then I turned off the phone and held it to my chest. We started planting herbs together, just a few pots on the back porch. Basil, mint, parsley. I told her the secret to keeping rosemary alive was to talk to it every morning. She rolled her eyes, but I caught her whispering to the plants a week later. She wrote in a new journal every night, the one she called our memory ledger. She asked me for stories before bed, reverse bedtime now, and I told her things I had never told anyone. About her father's first tooth, his first fight, the time he brought home a turtle and tried to keep it in the bathtub. She cried sometimes, quietly. She would rest her head on my shoulder and let it out without shame. I cried too. It was not easy. Forgiveness never is, but it was real. One evening, we were walking the trail behind the house, the one I used to take alone, praying for strength. The trees were beginning to turn, painting the world in oranges and golds. She stopped, pointed up at a hawk gliding above us. "I used to think you were watching me like that," she said, waiting to pounce. I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "Now I think you were watching to make sure nothing else did." She smiled, and I felt the years melt off my bones. I do not know how long I will have left. Time is a stingy companion. But I do know this. My granddaughter sees me now, not just the woman with too many rules, or the shadow of a mistake she could not name, but me, Jess, the woman who stayed, and in her eyes, I am no longer a witch. I am home. The years passed quietly, the way good years often do. Emily grew up, not just in height or voice or the shape of her shoulders, but in spirit. The kind of growth you do not see in mirrors, only in moments. She finished school, then college, then came back home, not out of necessity but choice. That choice meant more to me than any diploma ever could. She started a small farm initiative right here in our county. Clean crops, honest work, no chemicals, no cutting corners. She called it Second Soil, a name she said came from us, from the idea that even wounded land could grow something beautiful again if you tended to it right. She became a quiet force in the community, spoke at town halls, helped rebuild the farmers market, got kids from the local high school involved in planting and harvesting. There was talk about a feature on the evening news, maybe even a grant from the state. But none of that mattered as much to me as what she did at the end of each day. She came home to me. One afternoon in October, the air still warm but edged with gold, she packed a thermos of apple cider and a blanket and said, "We're going for a walk, Gran." I let her lead me past the house, down the back trail we used to take during those first quiet days of forgiveness, and then farther, past the barn, to where the fields stretched wide and tall, corn, golden, waving in the wind like hands reaching toward the sky. She had planted it herself that spring. I had watched her from the porch, mud on her jeans, hair tied back, laughter in her lungs. She had grown every stalk with the kind of care some people save for their children. We spread the blanket in a small clearing between rows, where the sun slanted through the leaves in long, glowing lines. The kind of light that makes you believe in something more. We sat in silence for a while, sipping cider, listening to the rustle of the field. Then she reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were strong now, calloused in places, warm and steady. "Do you remember," she said, "when I told the whole world you were a witch?" I smiled. It was a memorable performance. She laughed softly. "And now here I am," she said, "farming the same land you once dreamed of retiring on. Feeding people, healing things, all because you didn't give up on me." I squeezed her hand. "I never gave up," I said. "I just got quiet." She looked at me then. Really looked. Eyes deep and brown, full of that same ache her father once carried. "I used to think love meant being rescued," she said. "But it doesn't, does it? It means staying, even when the person you're staying for tells you to go." I nodded. "That's the kind of love I had for you," I whispered. She blinked away tears. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I shook my head. "You saw it when it mattered." She pulled something from her coat pocket, an old ribbon, faded red. "I found this in one of Dad's letters," she said. "He said you gave it to me when I was little, tied it around my ponytail before you took me away. I kept it." I touched the ribbon. It was fraying, soft from time, but whole. "I tied it the day we left," I said. "I wanted you to feel loved, even if you couldn't remember it later." She smiled. "I remember now." The wind shifted then, sending a whisper through the corn like applause. "I want you to live here with me," she said suddenly, "in the cottage by the orchard. We can plant lavender out front. I'll build you a bench in the sun. You'll never have to cook unless you want to." I chuckled. "You offering to take care of an old woman?" "No," she said. "I'm offering to take care of the woman who once took care of me when I didn't know I needed it." There was a long silence. Then she said, with a voice full of something ancient and true, "I am so lucky you loved me when I was hardest to love." I turned my hand in hers, held it tight. "And I whispered, have waited my whole life to hear you say that." We sat there as the sun dipped lower, turning everything to amber. The shadows grew longer, but the light stayed warm. She rested her head on my shoulder. I leaned mine against hers. The corn swayed. The world turned. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt not just peace, but purpose. My life, as messy and painful and quiet as it had been, had meant something. It had grown something. Thank you for listening to my story, not a fairy tale, but the truth that stayed silent for far too long. If you've ever been misunderstood, ever loved in silence, ever sacrificed without anyone noticing, then I hope this story found a place in your heart. Please subscribe to Grandma True Stories so you never miss another memory from the quiet women who walked through storms and still chose love. Because when a grandmother speaks, the world should listen. We'll meet again.